It's obvious, isn't it? If it was between you and Mommy, no, Mom, my priority right now is Mom.
I don't want this kind of husband anymore. I am his wife, who is battling cancer. How dare he ask me to take care of his mother? Then my doctor, who had overheard the call, said to my husband,
I'm sorry, sir, but your wife just... What?
After the words from the doctor, what awaited my husband was a tragic end that could only be described as self-inflicted. My name is Vanessa, a 36-year-old office worker. My family consists of 4 people: my husband, Alan, my first daughter, Eleanor, and my second daughter, Kathy. My daughters are 5 and 1 years old, respectively. Eleanor, the eldest daughter, has been a strong woman since she was a child. She takes good care of Kathy. Looking back, it was my daughters who always supported me when I was going through a difficult time. It was natural to think that ever since my husband, Alan, started to neglect his family. I know why. It all started with Connie, my husband's mother. I have hated this woman since the beginning of our marriage. She is a very old-fashioned person and a nagger. She has been sarcastic to me for any reason she can think of, but in the end, no matter what I do, Connie doesn't like it. I heard that every family has a problem between wife and mother-in-law, so I thought it was just the way of the world when I first got married. However, a few years later, I became pregnant with my first daughter, Eleanor. During the medical checkup, we were told all along that the gender was a boy. When I told my parents-in-law about this, they were unusually kind to me. However, when it came time to give birth, I was surprised to find out that it was a girl. My parents, who came to visit me, and I laughed together about how such a thing could happen. My parents-in-law also came to see me. Unlike my father-in-law, who looked at her kindly and said how cute she was, my mother-in-law glared at Eleanor. My mother noticed right away. I'm so happy to have a first grandchild, aren't you? Vanessa, you did a great job. It was a remark that was intended to soften the atmosphere, but after the next words from my mother-in-law, the place instantly froze. Is that so? I heard it was a boy. I feel like I've been tricked by Vanessa. I raised both boys and girls in my family, but girls grow to talk back, so it's more difficult to raise a daughter. I would have loved to raise a boy again. Well, that was disappointing. Vanessa, next time, make sure to have a boy. What? What's with her? I mean, if it was a boy, were you going to raise him yourself? I glanced to the side and saw my mother even angrier than I was with a monster-like expression. Hey, what did you just say? Are you disappointed? Do you want a boy next time? You're a woman too, right? Are you crazy? Apologize to my precious daughter and granddaughter right now. My mother is usually a mild-mannered woman, but my mother-in-law's words were so insane that she became furious. My mother-in-law flinched a little at my mother's change, but shouted back, What is this all of a sudden? It's so rude to call me crazy. It's offensive. My father-in-law, who was standing next to her, cuts in.
It's true that you're crazy. You're a fool.
My mother-in-law was quickly sent out of the hospital room. After that, my mother-in-law sent me an apology, probably forced. But such an apology could not possibly have touched my heart. I completely closed my heart to my mother-in-law. As expected, my mother-in-law was not at all interested in her grandchild, Eleanor. Nevertheless, she was very much loved by my father-in-law and my husband's sister, Melanie. And my husband, on the other hand, he did what he was told without complaint. However, he did not actively participate in the childcare. Better than doing nothing. I had heard that the husbands of my mom's friends were similar to my husband, so I just told myself it was the way it is. I gave my all to raise my child day after day, but then something happened to my husband. 2 months after our second daughter, Kathy, was born, my father-in-law had a heart attack and suddenly passed. My husband and I couldn't wrap our heads around the suddenness of the situation. My mother-in-law was very depressed. I couldn't go to places with my newborn Kathy, who couldn't even sit up yet. My prognosis after childbirth was not good either.
Vanessa, are you alright? You need to lie down for a while. We'll take care of the kids.
Melanie and my in-laws were very kind to me. While I lied down, I saw my husband comforting his mother ever since his father passed away. I could understand my husband's concern for my mother-in-law, but I also thought that he should be the one taking care of the children as a father. Then they seemed to notice my gaze. My mother-in-law came up to me and said,
Hey, why are you sleeping? You're a wife. You're supposed to take the initiative in times like this.
My mother-in-law's shrill voice echoed in my head. I looked at my husband, who was standing behind my mother-in-law. He quickly looked away. I was very sad. It seemed that my mother-in-law was the odd one out among the in-laws.
Hey, Mom, Vanessa just had a baby 2 months ago. How can you talk to her that badly? And you too, Alan. You should care a little about Vanessa and your daughters. Also, don't do such embarrassing things in front of your father.
My sister-in-law said something like that to them. The in-laws also sympathized with my sister-in-law's words. They looked at the two of them coldly. My mother-in-law and my husband were quite embarrassed. When their faces turned bright red, they glared at me lightly and returned to where they had been. After that, my husband went to his parents' house every day for some reason and came home late every day. I had to do all the housework and childcare by myself, and the number of quarrels between us increased day by day. You should take care of the kids once in a while. It's too hard for me to do everything by myself every day, I would tell him, and he would reply,
What are you talking about? That's your job right now. And saying that raising kids is hard? You're a mother, right? You're crazy.
I was so shocked by my husband's words that I didn't even feel like talking back. After a while, I received a notice to get a cervical cancer checkup. I had been getting checked regularly, so I thought I would be fine, but I took the test just to be sure. However, I was told that I had cervical cancer. I was speechless. There had been no abnormalities just a short time before, so it seemed that I had developed cancer within a short period of time. Of course, the first thing that came to my mind was my beloved daughters. I have 2 daughters. I still have to live. I couldn't stop the tears from flowing.
Don't worry. You're still in the early stages. Let's work together.
The doctor, who looked cold but had a kind voice, reminded me of my father. I was going to be hospitalized for a while, so I asked my parents to take care of my daughters. Please take good care of my daughters, I told them on the day of hospitalization. Of course. I'm so happy to be able to live with my grandchildren for a while. Vanessa, it's going to be okay. I thanked my mother for the bright response. Eleanor, my eldest daughter, looking at me worriedly and said,
Mommy, you are coming home from the hospital, okay?
Yes, I'll definitely be back, good as ever, I answered, fighting back tears. I told my husband about my illness, but what was his reaction?
Early stages? Good for you. You should ask your parents to take care of the kids. I've got work to do and I'm worried about my mom, so... I was so disgusted at my husband's decision to leave the children to my parents as if it were a matter of course. By the way, my husband and mother-in-law never came to visit me once during my stay in the hospital. When I get out of the hospital, I'm going to divorce him immediately. In my mind, that was the best choice I had, but my husband made a ridiculous request to me. We've had a call from your husband. He seems to be in a very bad mood. One day, as I was getting close to leaving the hospital, my phone started receiving a large number of calls from my husband in the morning. Naturally, I couldn't bring myself to answer them, so I ignored them. It seemed that he had given up calling me and decided to call the hospital. I wonder if he's thinking of apologizing. With this thought in mind, I picked up the phone. Why didn't you answer your phone? It's important. Come home right now.
What? After that, I was speechless at the heartless words that came out of my husband's mouth.
Mom fell down the stairs and sprained her leg. I have to go to work, and you're getting out of the hospital soon, right? Can't you get out a little early? Melanie's not around. You can take care of Mom instead.
I couldn't keep my mouth shut. What are you talking about? You know I'm in the hospital with cancer, right? Are you treating me the same as if I have a sprain? That's going too far, isn't it? Are you crazy? I've been thinking for a while now. Me or your mother, which is more important to you? I asked.
It's obvious, isn't it? If it was between you and Mommy, and no, Mom. My priority right now is Mom.
He answered, without hesitation. What's with this guy? As I remained silent, the doctor in charge, who was standing nearby, spoke up.
I'm sorry, sir, but your wife, she just told me that she is divorcing you. Therefore, why don't you, as her son, take care of your mother? Or rather, since she's your parent in the first place, it is your role to take care of her, isn't it? Don't you think that's normal? You're asking her to leave the hospital early. Who the hell do you think you are? It's not up to you to decide. I'm the doctor. What?
My husband was flustered on the phone because he was suddenly yelled at by a doctor he had never met. A few minutes before this happened, the doctor in charge had visited me in my hospital room. After I finished asking some question about how I was supposed to spend my time after leaving the hospital, he asked me,
Is there anything else on your mind?
Well, actually, my husband and I are thinking of getting a divorce. I'm worried about my children since my body is in such a state. But I guess you wouldn't be interested in any of this. I laughed weakly, and then a nurse came to visit me, holding the phone. I continued the doctor's words toward my husband. When I'm discharged from the hospital, I'm planning to talk about our divorce. I've wanted to talk for a long time, but I haven't been able to talk much lately because of someone who only sees his mommy. I dared to use the word mommy I had heard. I wondered how he would react, but it seemed that he realized that he could not win us just by him, so he hung up. That was anticlimactic, but I thanked the doctor for his help.
He is an unbelievable man. You must have gone through a lot in your life with him. You have a bright future ahead of you.
The doctor smiled at me, and I smiled back as I agreed. After being discharged from the hospital, of course, I did not return home, but went straight to my parents' house. My husband had never contacted me since that day. There was no reason for me to contact him. However, on the weekend, my husband suddenly visited my parents' house with an unwanted companion. Of course, it was my mother-in-law, who looked completely healed from her sprain.
You say you're going to have a talk like you're the one in charge. You should be ashamed of yourself for involving your grandchildren and your parents in your selfishness.
She raised her voice as she saw me.
For my part, I think it's more embarrassing for you to just show up at someone's house and rant and rave in a loud voice.
My mother, who said this without hesitation while snickering, was already ready to fight. Contrary to my mother, my father is calm.
Well, look who's here. We can't all be standing in the doorway to talk. You should let them in,
he said to my mother. I left my daughters with my mother and I started. I will now begin our discussion. First, I will never give up custody of my daughters. Then, there is the matter of child support. As I proceeded with my story in a calm manner, my husband looked impatiently at me and said,
Wait a minute. Don't go ahead with the conversation on your own. We don't have to get a divorce. We can just carry on as before. If you're having a hard time, you can stay here for a while, so I'm sure the girls will feel lonely without their father.
What the hell is this man talking about? My husband goes on mumbling. I didn't even want to look at him anymore. To that, my father calmly said,
Yeah, okay. I don't care what you have to say. Can you just fill this in and make your way home? I have a guest waiting in the back.
My father presented my husband with the divorce papers, my part already filled out. His calm face kind of scared me.
Did you hear what Alan said? He's telling you he's not willing to get a divorce. Can't you even listen to others? This is why I hate insane people.
My anger reached its peak at my mother-in-law's statement. What? Who are you to say that? Don't tell me you think you're a sensible person, because that's impossible. You are like the definition of insane walking around with clothes on. For a second, I thought I was going too far, but I did not regret that statement at all. My mother-in-law's face turned red and tried to use violence towards me when...
You stupid mother and son over there!
I heard an angry voice from the other room. The two of them widened their eyes in surprise at the appearance of this person.
Melanie, why are you here?
My sister-in-law glared at them.
I heard Vanessa was out of the hospital, so I came to see her. I should have just cut you off at Dad's funeral. It's embarrassing to have such people as my family. I ask that you never get in touch with me as of today.
To my sister-in-law, who said this coldly,
You have always been like that. All you do is talk and act cocky. Alan, on the other hand, is so honest. I should never have had you.
How could she say that to her own daughter? As a mother, I felt nothing but indignation. But my sister-in-law did not back down.
You're the one who's the same as you've always been. You've always been so mean to me just because your son follows what you say and is cuter to you than me.
It's no wonder I have no family now that my father is dead. And I heard that you asked Vanessa to get out of the hospital to take care of your sprain. Are you crazy?
Oh yeah, Vanessa and I talked about this earlier with Melinda.
Melinda is as pissed off as she's ever been. At the mention of Melinda, the faces of both of them turned pale. Melinda is my late father-in-law's sister. It seems that even the craziest mother-in-law has someone she doesn't like. That was Melinda. When my mother-in-law was still young, Melinda kept lecturing her until she cried when she used to be overbearing at family gatherings, saying that she was the eldest son's wife. Melinda also lectured her about her comments towards me at my father-in-law's funeral. While I was talking to my sister-in-law about divorce, she suggested,
Hey, why don't we talk to my aunt about it?
And sure enough, Melinda was furious. She said she would not invite them to any future gatherings. The area around my parents-in-law's house was almost entirely made up of relatives, so it was given that they would be ostracized. The two of them seemed to realize that too.
If that happens, we're finished.
To my mother-in-law, shaking in her small, trembling voice, my sister-in-law replied sharp words cut through.
Don't worry, you've been a failure as a human being a long time ago.
I struggled to hold back my laughter. My husband looked at me with a sudden look.
Vanessa, please reconsider. It's not like I've been unfaithful or in debt. I'm just happy that my mother counted on me. Lately, you didn't praise me at all when I helped you with the housework and childcare.
In response to my husband's remark, I said, I hear that the cause of divorce is usually differences in values, and that's true. Who would want a father who only hangs out at his mother's place without taking care of his own children? I don't want that. And as long as you think that you are helping me with housework and childcare, I don't need you. The words were coming out of my mouth so smoothly.
But Kathy is only 1 year old.
My husband, who was still mumbling at this point, was cut off by my father.
Hey, Alan, what do you think is the role of a father?
My father asked as he looked at him straight in the eye.
It's, well, money. As a father, I make money.
Without delay, my father said,
What? No, that's not it. That's your personal role, isn't it? And if it's about money, Vanessa has a job too, right? And on top of that, she's very busy with housework and childcare. What the hell are you doing as a father in that house? What?
My husband looked dumbfounded at my father's question.
I told you when Eleanor was born that from now on you would take over for me and protect my daughter and grandchildren. Can you look me in the eye and tell me that you are doing that? I don't think you can. That's why I told you from the beginning to sign the divorce papers and get out of our life. What do I have to say to make you understand?
My mother is the type who gets emotional when she is angry. My father, on the other hand, is the opposite. He is quiet and gets angry with a calm face. That is very scary. My husband couldn't say anything. My mother-in-law, who was standing next to him, was also in a state of absent-mindedness, as if her soul had been drained out of her. Here you go. I hand him a pen. With trembling hands, he finally started to sign. When he had finished writing, I said to him, I thank you for giving me 2 daughters. Kathy recently learned to walk. You wouldn't know, would you? As a father, can you tell me what they like to play with or what foods they like to eat? I am responsible for my daughters now. Please pay your child support. There is nothing else you can do for them as a father. My cold words made him finally grasp the situation. Tears began to well up in my husband's eyes. In the end, he fell face down on the desk and cried aloud. What was to become of the 2 of them? It seemed that Melinda gave them a lengthy lecture, but
I have put up with it for many years. Melinda is a complete stranger to me now that my husband is gone. Alan was just a good, loving child. It's just an early stage cancer. Just because his stupid wife made a big deal out of it. I'm the victim here. I'm going to sell this house and get the hell out of here.
But my ex-mother-in-law forgot something important. The house was originally owned by my late grandfather-in-law. It was jointly inherited by my father-in-law and Melinda. In other words, the house could not be sold without Melinda's permission. Oh my, you're still here? And when are you leaving? Melinda was egging her, but she had nowhere to go, so she seemed to have quieted down completely. As for my ex-husband, he was working for a company owned by his family, but he had to be punished for his actions. He has changed from his desk-oriented job to a salesman, sweating profusely every day. He's not the type of person who is a hard worker, so his performance is always at the bottom of the list. His pride became shredded. He seems to be lying on a bed of nails because many of his co-workers are his relatives. But I think he deserves it, since it is the end result of his own actions. As expected, my ex-husband seems to have realized and moved away from his mother. However, my ex-husband has no one else to turn to but his mother, who seems to be contacting him every day. He seems to be neurotic now. From my point of view, I think they are both crazy, so they should go ahead and do whatever they want to do. I am too busy raising my children to spend a second thinking about them. I feel much better than I did before the divorce. I don't have to cook meals for my ex-husband who would come home unannounced. I can do housework and childcare at my own pace. I have now returned to work and I am doing my best with the support of my parents. The biggest source of emotional support is the smiling faces of my daughters. I hope that my ex-husband will regret for the rest of his life that he was not able to watch his beautiful children grow up. Thinking of this, I vow to be a strong mother.
When are you going to leave? You're just after money, you dirty woman. That's right. She's really filthy. On top of that, she has a rude mouth, an ugly face and heart. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law laughed mockingly at me and made a fool of me. Even though I have been taking care of my father-in-law after my husband eloped, why do I have to endure such remarks? I ran out of patience and finally decided to leave my in-laws. Afterwards, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law experienced hell. Well, why are we going through this? My name is Tammy, a 34-year-old office worker. I graduated from university and have been working in the same company ever since. I currently hold the position of assistant manager, responsible for many subordinates. It's a role of great responsibility. I have been with this company for 12 years, and it is a great place to work. and the work is very rewarding. I've always enjoyed working, but regardless, I consistently think it's a great company. And I think a big reason for that is because the president, Douglas, is a very good person. This company is quite successful even among small and medium-sized enterprises, with good sales and decent salaries. But what sets it apart is its remarkably low employee turnover rate. Actually, since I joined the company, very few people have left. And even when they did, it was mostly due to reasons like marriage or childbirth. I have been enjoying my work every day, feeling glad that I joined this company. And perhaps because of my positive attitude toward work, I had gained a great liking from the president. Therefore, about a year ago, the president made me the following proposal.
Tammy, you are truly diligent, hardworking, and a wonderful woman. If you're okay with it, would you mind meeting my son, Nathan?
Huh?
Oh well, if you already have a boyfriend or are considering marriage, then it's a different story. But I would like you to meet my son at least once.
I was taken aback when the president suddenly said that to me. It happened to be a time when I didn't have a boyfriend, and besides, I didn't have the courage to refuse such a request from the president. I hadn't had many opportunities to meet someone, and my parents had been asking me when I was going to get married, so I decided to give it a try. When I agreed, the president was very pleased.
Thank you. I will contact my son right away.
And just like that, a date for me to meet the president's son was quickly arranged. On another day, after work, the president invited me to a fancy restaurant. When I arrived there, both the president and his son were waiting for me.
Nice to meet you. I'm Nathan.
His first impression gave off a refreshing and handsome vibe. With a gentle smile, he greeted me, and I couldn't help but feel a flutter in my heart. We enjoyed our meal and had various conversations. His stories were interesting, and I found myself drawn to him. Afterward, we exchanged contact information, and he contacted me later to arrange another meeting between the two of us, which I agreed to. To be honest, I had a better impression of him than I had expected. And when we met again, the time spent with him was incredibly enjoyable. From then on, we went on more dates and became a couple.
Tammy, I heard from Nathan. It looks like you've decided to start dating.
I apologize for a delayed announcement.
Oh no, there's no need to worry about that. Nathan feels relieved to be in a relationship with someone like you, Tammy. But if there's ever anything you're not comfortable with, feel free to end things with Nathan at any time.
The president laughs when he said that, but I have had no complaints about Nathan so far. He is kind, reliable, and we are in the same generation, so we have great conversations. He is also gentlemanly, and I couldn't find a single thing to dislike about him. Afterward, we continued our relationship smoothly. Although he is the president's son, he currently works in a different company, not his father's. I learned that he has been working there since graduating from university and feels a sense of gratitude for being given the opportunity, which is why he has chosen to stay there. Eventually, he may transfer to this company to succeed the president, but that decision will be made through decisions between him and the president. So I haven't particularly touched upon that topic. Amidst all this, one day, Nathan proposed to me.
I want to walk everywhere with you for the rest of my life. Tammy, please marry me.
Being proposed to by Nathan made me incredibly happy. Of course, my answer was already decided. I will be with you for the rest of my life. And so, we decided to get married. Nathan and I went together to inform the president about our decision.
Oh, so you're finally getting married. This is wonderful news. Let's celebrate right away by going out for a meal with our families.
The president, pleased with the news, made plans for a dinner with my future in-laws. I felt relieved that the president was happy about it. A few days later, I had a meal at the restaurant with my future in-laws. Nathan's family consists of his father, Douglas, his mother, Anna, and his sister, Rachel. It was my first time meeting Anna and Rachel. As expected of the president's wife and the president's daughter, they were dressed in high-end brands and exuded elegance. I suddenly became nervous. Although I have known the president and Nathan for a long time, and don't get nervous around them, I knew that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would scrutinize me as another woman. I couldn't help but worry if they would like me or not.
Nice to meet you. I'm Nathan's mother, and this is my daughter Rachel.
Hello, nice to meet you. I look forward to getting to know you.
Well, it seems you take care of your appearance.
Rachel suddenly said that while checking out my outfit. It was the most expensive outfit I had, so if it was criticized, I thought I would be in trouble. I was relieved to receive a compliment. Afterward, we enjoyed our meal and conversation. Thanks to occasional support from Nathan and the president, I was able to have smooth conversations with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law.
Tell me, nice to meet you. Let's get along from now on. As the wife of this family, please take your responsibilities seriously.
Yes, thank you. I will do my best. I suppose for now, I have gained the approval of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Hearing those words from my mother-in-law brought me some relief. Afterward, we completed the introduction between the two families, and Nathan and I had our wedding ceremony. Many people from the company attended the wedding, as it was the wedding of the president's son and deputy manager. And as the wedding proceeded smoothly, Nathan stepped forward in front of everyone, took the microphone, and made the following declaration.
Thank you very much for attending our wedding today. From now on, I will be transferring to my father's company and working with the assumption of succeeding as the president. I kindly ask for your guidance and support.
Afterward, the president also stepped forward.
Everyone, please take care of my son from now on.
And he made his greetings. The venue was filled with excitement, and everyone applauded together. The wedding was a great success and became a joyful ceremony. Afterward, Nathan and I went on our honeymoon abroad and started living together upon our return. Our newlywed life was incredibly enjoyable. Since both my husband and I work in the same company, we commuted together every day and devoted ourselves to our work. Although my husband is in a different department, he seems to be diligently learning his job. Well, since he will eventually become the president, he may come to my department in the future, and I might even teach him about work. To ensure that I can properly guide him when that time comes, I will also put my full effort into work. With enthusiasm, we worked and had a wonderful newlywed life at home.
Tammy, you are really good at cooking. It's really delicious.
Thank you. It's worth cooking when you eat it so happily like that. My husband always ate the dishes I made with great delight, and he never failed to compliment their deliciousness. I lived alone for a long time and cooked for myself a lot, so I was getting good at cooking. I felt glad that I could be useful in this way. My husband and I were living a happy newlywed life, and I truly felt that marrying him was the right decision. We lived a peaceful life as a couple for a while after that. But about 2 years into our marriage, my mother-in-law began to interfere in my affairs. Hello, Anna. How can I help you?
Tammy, when are you going to have children? Huh? It's been 2 years since you got married, you know. You'll be in trouble if you don't give birth to an heir soon. My mother-in-law started shouting like that suddenly over the phone. I'm sorry, but having children is a gift from nature. My husband and I have been discussing waiting for it to happen naturally. Well, how dare you give me your opinion as a daughter-in-law? I can't believe it. You're getting too full of yourself just because my son likes you, aren't you?
No, that's not true.
Then have a child right away, or else I will make you two get divorced.
That's... My mother-in-law was pressuring me by saying such things. I immediately consulted my husband.
My mother said something like that?
Yes, she shouted at me and said those things.
That's terrible.
My husband said he would talk to his mother and address the issue. But then, I received a phone call from my sister-in-law.
Hey, listen here. What's your intention trying to tattle on Nathan and attack our mother? Your actions are petty.
I never had any intention to attack anyone. I simply discussed it with my husband because I was being unfairly criticized.
Oh, great. Nathan made a mistake by bringing in an insolent wife like you.
That's... My sister-in-law, just like my mother-in-law, directed harsh words at me. At that moment, I realized that both of them disliked me. If they want an heir so badly, why don't they let my sister-in-law have the child? Why am I the only one being blamed? But if I were to say such things, they would get even angrier. So I held back my words and remained silent.
Now my sister too?
When I consulted my husband, he had a look of disbelief.
My sister has always been divorced once and came back home. So maybe she don't like you, Tammy.
That's...
Well, you don't have to deal with them.
However, even if my husband said that, there was a strong possibility that they would still come after me on their own. What should I do in that situation? I was thinking that, and sure enough, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law snubbed me every time I went to my parents-in-law's house. They would call me names like a heartless woman, useless, or a gold digger. They would take advantage of moments when my husband and father-in-law weren't around to say such things. I had no choice but to endure, and going to my in-laws' house became extremely unpleasant for me. However, amidst all of that, another troubling incident occurred. My father-in-law, who is also the president, suddenly collapsed. The cause was a heart attack. Thankfully, he managed to survive, but due to the severity, he was left with some after effects. Unfortunately, it affected his legs, and he ended up requiring care. This not only caused distress within our family, but also unsettled everyone at the company. We immediately held a family meeting to discuss the situation. I had thought that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who lived with him in the family home, would cooperate in taking care of my father-in-law. However, both of them refused to do so.
I absolutely refuse to do any caregiving. I don't want to do it either.
Why is that? He's your family. You live with him.
Taking care of someone and valuing them are two different things. Anyway, we don't want to waste our efforts and time on caregiving.
Waste? I was disappointed with their arguments. Despite the fact that they can live comfortable life thanks to my father-in-law's earnings, I wondered if these two even had a sense of gratitude. My husband was also exasperated by their statements.
Then should we hire a caregiver?
My husband made that suggestion, but surprisingly, both of them began to reject even that.
Absolutely not. That's right. Allowing a stranger to freely come and go in our house? We have no idea what could be stolen. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law vehemently opposed it, saying such things. Then what should we do? You're not suggesting we put your father in a care facility, right? My father-in-law may have mobility issues with his legs, but his mind is still sharp and he's full of energy. He even says he can continue working while using a wheelchair. The option of putting him in a facility is unthinkable. It seems like my mother-in-law and sister-in-law understand that too. And then, they came up with a ridiculous idea. Well, why don't you do it, Tammy? Huh? That's right! Taking care of a family member is the wife's duty after all. You should be the one providing the caregiving. But, well, Nathan is working, so he doesn't have time for caregiving, right? That's why you're the only one available. But I also work at my father-in-law's company. Oh, please. I bet you don't do much there, do you? Exactly. You have just brown-nosed your boss and climbed the corporate ladder. The words of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were too cruel. And the conversation kept going in circles. And in the end, I had no choice but to give in.
So Tammy will be taking care of me?
Yes, that's what we discussed.
But what about your job?
You don't need to worry about that. That's right. She's willing to do it for us. Besides, Nathan and Tammy will be living here with us, so we can have a peaceful and secure life. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law made various decisions without considering my opinion, and I was forced into a life of living with them and taking care of them in my in-laws' house. My father-in-law responded,
Well, if everyone has discussed and decided on it.
Douglas seems to accept it with understanding. He must be glad that his son will be coming back home. Afterwards, thanks to my father-in-law's arrangements, I continue to be employed at the company while taking on the responsibility of caregiving. This meant temporarily putting on hold the work I had been handling myself. From then on, I started taking care of my father-in-law at my in-laws' house.
Tammy, I'm truly sorry.
What are you saying, Douglas? We're family, so please rely on me anytime. Caring for my father-in-law itself wasn't that difficult. He was very kind and grateful to me. On the contrary, it was the time outside of caregiving that was challenging. Living with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law felt like being treated as a housekeeper. I was supposed to be cohabiting for the purpose of caregiving, but somehow, most of the household chores ended up falling on me. Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would mess up the house as they pleased and go out to enjoy themselves at their own convenience. My father-in-law was dismayed by their behavior.
You don't have to worry too much about the household chores. Anyway, those two wouldn't even notice if you cut corners or not.
Douglas's word gave me some relief. However, during this time, I had another worry, and that was about my husband. My husband, who used to be so kind, started to push all the caregiving and household tasks onto me, just like my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. And since I started staying home for caregiving, my husband started coming home much later. He claimed to be working late every day, but I noticed an increase in the days when he smelled of alcohol. There were days when I noticed the scent of shampoo or soap on him, which made me feel suspicious. Furthermore, I continued to endure the mistreatment from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, making my life in this house gradually more painful. In the midst of all that, an unexpected event occurred. My husband suddenly disappeared. Strictly speaking, he eloped with a co-worker and vanished without a trace. While both my father-in-law and I were absent, it seems that my husband was freely indulging himself at work and had developed a romantic relationship with his secretary. And then, he abandoned everything and disappeared with her. This came as a shock to the entire family. My husband, who was supposed to take over as president, was gone, and he was even having an affair with his secretary. Due to his reckless behavior, the company's management was on the verge of collapsing. In order to handle this situation, my father-in-law, despite being in a wheelchair, had no choice but to take charge and handle various matters. I was filled with sadness and frustration due to the betrayal from my husband. But first and foremost, I had to support my father-in-law and rebuild the company. So I suppressed my own feelings. I could not abandon my father-in-law and the company. After that, for a while, I took care of my father-in-law's caregiving while also attending board meetings together. I was working with my father-in-law while being at home. Since my father-in-law's mind was still sharp, the company's recovery was progressing smoothly, and little by little, our daily life was returning to a more stable state. In the midst of all that, one day, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law confronted me. "Hey, Tammy." "What is it, Rachel?" "When are you leaving?" "Huh?" "Well, you were abandoned by Nathan, weren't you? He even left behind the pre-filled divorce papers and walked out. And yet, you're still lingering here. Isn't it because you're after our father's inheritance? You're just a money-hungry, despicable woman." Upon hearing that, my mother-in-law joined in and followed suit. "That's right. You are truly disgusting. On top of that, you have a rude mouth and an ugly face and heart." Saying that, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law mocked me and burst into laughter. Even after my husband eloped, I had been taking care of my father-in-law, so why do I have to endure such comments? "Just get out of it already. You poor excuse for a person." Unbelievable. Just how much do they think I've done for this house and company? I've reached my limit, and I finally decided to leave my in-laws' house. First, I played the recordings I had kept of the numerous verbal abuses from the two of them to my father-in-law. I couldn't just keep taking it without doing anything. That's why I was recording it for some time in the future. My father-in-law was left speechless after hearing the countless outrageous verbal attacks from the two of them.
Tammy, I feel truly sorry for causing you so much pain all this time. I didn't realize it before, and I deeply apologize.
My father-in-law apologized to me. He also mentioned that he would divorce my mother-in-law and cut ties with my sister-in-law.
Thank you so much for everything you have done until now. If you're okay with it, Tammy, I would like to continue relying on you at the company. Is that alright?
Yes, I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you. I decided to leave the house with my father-in-law's permission. Afterward, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law ended up experiencing hellish circumstances. It must have been around 2 weeks later. I received a phone call from them. "Hello, what's the matter?"
Wait a minute. What do you mean? Why are we going through all this?
Both of them appear flustered. "Please calm down and speak properly."
We were kicked out by my father. You must have manipulated something.
They expressed their anger while saying so. I simply played the recording of the verbal abuse you two subjected me to all this time and let Douglas listen to it.
What?
Well, Douglas got angry after hearing about it and kicked you both out. So it's your own fault, isn't it?
Don't joke around. What do you think you are doing? That's right. You're just a plain woman who got dumped by Nathan.
Say whatever you want. It doesn't matter, right? However, I'm already free. Oh, and by the way, I will be taking over Douglas' company.
What do you mean?
Nathan abandoned his work and ran away from the company. You two weren't working to begin with, so it seems Douglas wanted to entrust everything to me. In fact, ever since Nathan eloped and abandoned his duties, I have been working closely with Douglas all this time. It seems I was able to earn his trust. That's unbelievable. Are you trying to take everything from us? Oh no, not at all. First of all, isn't the house and company both owned by Douglas? Besides, it was you two who were benefiting from it, right? But if you act arrogantly and do as you please, it's no wonder you are no longer welcome. I've already conveyed what I wanted to say, so are we done here? I'm busy, unlike you two who just play around. Wait a minute! I said that and hung up the phone. It was a bit disappointing that I couldn't see my mother-in-law's frantic reaction. But since it seems like they were in quite a difficult situation, I thought, well, serves them right. Afterward, my in-law's divorce was finalized, and my father-in-law sold the house. Currently, he's living alone in a luxurious barrier-free apartment and has hired a caregiver to assist him in his daily life. At work, my father-in-law has been teaching me various things to prepare me for taking over as president. By the way, concerning my ex-husband, it seems that a few years ago, he accumulated debt and found himself in trouble, so he visited my father-in-law for help. However, of course, my father-in-law turned down my ex-husband's request. It appears that my ex-husband mentioned that he would take over the company. But when he heard that I would be taking over instead soon, he seems to be filled with despair. And so, it was declared that his ties would be severed with my father-in-law. And it seems he hasn't been seen since then. I don't know how he's doing now, but he's probably struggling with a life full of debt and poverty. By the way, my ex-mother-in-law and ex-sister-in-law are living together in a cheap apartment, I heard. Unable to forget their once affluent lifestyle, they have apparently become overwhelmed with credit card payments and consumer loans, drowning in debt themselves. The path they will follow from now on will undoubtedly be a living hell, but it no longer matters to me. I intend to make good use of what I learned from my father-in-law and protect the lives of my subordinate as their president.